Guten Tag, herzlich willkommen beim Spielart Festival by Together, How to Get Closer. Welcome everybody. This is going to be in English. We're going to talk today to Omar Abiazar and Ogutu Muraya. And the topic we've been given is creating ecosystems. Before we start talking, I would like to take a moment to tell you where I am, because it's the early morning for me, as opposed to you guys. Those of you who are in Munich, it's the early afternoon. I'm in a place traditionally known as Jojage, or with its colonial name, Montréal, which means that I'm on unceded traditional territory of the Ganingi Haga Nation. This is something that sounds unusual to European ears, but it's important in the place where I am that we acknowledge this fact that the territories we've settled on and that we're living on have never been ceded by the nations who lived here and still live here. The structure of the talk is the following. We're going to speak about mentorship programs, and Ogutu Muraya is going to go first. So I will introduce him. He'll do a short presentation. After that, I will invite Omar Abiazar to talk about Zukak's mentorship program, which has been running for 4 years now, I think. We will then start discussing a few general topics, considering learning environments, how do you map ecosystems, what do you hope to change, what do you hope to contribute. All of that will take us about 45 minutes, and then we will open the discussion to the audience. If you'd like to ask questions in German, or in fact in Arabic, in Kiswahili, in a number of other languages that the three of us can manage to speak, please feel free to do so, and we'll translate them to English and probably answer them in English. I think that's about all I had to say to start. So I will now introduce Ogutu Muraya, whom we're very happy to welcome. Ogutu is a writer and a theater maker, and we've known each other for 5-6 years, I believe, because 2 of Ogutu's performances, Fractured Memories and Because I Always Feel Like Running, as well as his video narration project, The Ocean Will Always Try to Pull You In, were presented at the festival I used to run in Hannover and Braunschweig, called Festival Theaterformen. In these works and other projects, Ogutu has developed new forms of storytelling, and he's interested in merging socio-political aspects with a strong belief, I'd say, in art as a catalyst for questioning certainties that we live with. Ogutu studied international relations at USIU Africa, and he graduated with a Master in Arts at the Amsterdam University of the Arts Das Theater. He's been published in a number of journals, magazines, books, Chimaranga Chronic, Recto Verso, etc. magazine. His performances, storytelling, and collaborations have been invited to several theaters and festivals on the African continent and in Europe. And more specifically, concerning the topic that we're going to speak about, he's been teaching as what he calls a roaming teacher, also in different countries in Europe, in Africa, sometimes doing workshops, masterclasses that are very closely related to his artistic work. But he's also now based in Nairobi, partly continuing his artistic practice, but he also teaches part-time at the Department of Film and Performing Arts at KCA University. So that's also something that we may talk about. Most recently, Ogutu Muraya has founded Mabara Theatre Exchange, which is a mentorship program. And the 2 first works produced through this program, Dilation by Esther Kamba and Roots, wait, let me check the name, Roots by Wanjiku Mwawuganga, have been presented at Spielart Festival these past days, and you may have had a chance to see them. Welcome, Ogutu. Could you tell us about what made you want to create the Mabara Theatre Exchange and how things have gone this first year?
Yeah. So the desire to create Mabara was based on an observation in essence around the ecosystem of arts and culture in Kenya and also specifically Nairobi, because there's such a concentration of energies there, which is itself a question to explore. And the realization, having been through the education system, is that there is a disconnection between the institutions of learning and the practitioners. And so, and often is also because art practitioners often start by and enter into the work learning by doing, not necessarily going through an art education. So the concept of art education is relatively, and especially a practice-based one or practice-driven one, is still something that is evolving in Nairobi. And Maabara was a way of trying to find a bridge between these two and really be in a process together. Also a slope, so take time. So it's 10 months. And the idea is look at practices, but also theory. And the considerations in between, and at the same time, it's about thinking about how, because we talk about art making, but we often don't talk about process making. How does one make a process for themselves? Yeah.
Can you give us an idea of how that works structurally over those 10 months? What are the things that happen? Who are the people involved? What kind of knowledge is shared? Yeah.
So I will share some images also so that it aids along in the conversation. Yep. So it starts with really a dialogue around what fascinates you as an artist, and what is present in you right now, and what topics do you want to focus on and research and expand and explore. And the first edition, it was also there was also a clear focus around the experiences of motherhood and working with mothers. But it was something that emerged organically through conversations with two artists that I was working with, Esther Kamba and Wanjiko Mwauganga. And so then once we sort of work there in terms of what is the area of fascination, then it's a process of how to conceptualize and to think through how to frame what you want to look at, because what is important is that it is a research and development process, not a production and presentation process. And so then we go into conversation indeed about process making. What does it mean to create a process for yourself as an artist? How does research, both primary and secondary, feed into your artistic process? And also not just research in terms of content, but also research in terms of aesthetics. And how these two merge together in a studio practice-based process that is delinked from the idea that it's going to be a product at the end, more around really going farther in taking time to explore your fascinations. And then once this process is triggered and the research is moving, there is a concept, there is now the research moving, there is the developmental stage as well, where through studio visits, through workshops, through one-on-one sessions, and also feedback sessions, we sort of go deeper into these conversations and topics. And there is so the artist is able to see, for me at least, how an idea travels, you know, and the interest is in this traveling. And so we also frame it as also how to engage with curiosity and playfulness as the driving force, as the fuel in behind this process. And on the other side also is rethinking failure. So seeing so failure and vulnerability, especially when you're in a space where something is building and growing slowly. And so we say we are practicing failure and vulnerability, the two things that in a way we are told are unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of that process, there is a showcase, and it's a showcase of works in progress.
Mm.
And what is also crucial is that the showcase happens so this we held it on the 24th of October in Nairobi at the Kenya Cultural Center, which is also part of the Kenya National Theatre, and also created a situation where there was also a possibility of dialogue with the audience. And that was, this is a part of the showcase that is showing now. And part of what was interesting also with that dialogue is also, again, part of this community building, which was also a question that emerged during that talk, is as you're building the artwork, as you're building the process, how do you also build an audience, a community of audience as well, and keep that interaction going. And so the discussions actually ended up being quite intense and quite full and rich at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. Lots of interesting topics to discuss. I think we're going to bring Omar into the conversation right now. Is that okay for you, Gutu?
Yeah, perfect.
Brilliant. So Omar Abiazar is a theatre director and a founding member of the Zukak Theatre Company. Before I continue speaking about Omar's achievements, there are a few things we need to say about Zukak. Zukak in Beirut is what the Zukak Theatre Company very humbly calls a studio. Before the explosion, it consisted of a theatre, a bar, a rehearsal space, an office. At least those are the spaces I had access to. I don't know what they were hiding elsewhere in the studio. And while I was taking my shower this morning, I was searching for a metaphor to express what Zukak means as a place, as a gathering of people. And I was thinking about an oasis, and then I thought, no, that's Orientalist, you can't use that. A harbor, but that felt like really too safe, in fact. And I thought about a family, but then we all know how families work and how restrictive that can be. So I was like, no, that's not the right word either. What it is it's a place where people create and share work and discuss it, where they're not afraid of strong opinions, and where they treat each other with a special kind of respect and care. A care that when you visit them once makes you want to be part of it in some way very quickly. And then I realized that, of course, Zukak themselves had already found the metaphor that I was looking for, because Zukak, the word, means, as Omar explained it to me, a small alleyway where people sit in front of their doors and have a chat. So it's the opposite of a road where you pass through quickly. It is a road, it is something that leads somewhere, but it's a place where you take the time to actually meet people and have conversations while you're going somewhere. So that's a short description of Zukak. Zukak obviously is not Omar on his own. His key collaborators are Maya Sbib, Junaid Sarieddin, and Lamia Abiazar. There are many, many, many more. And if he wants, Omar will be able to talk about them too. I'd like to share one sentence from the Zukak website, because it's really emblematic of what they themselves express and stand for. We created Zukak in 2006 as a non-hierarchical structure dedicated to theatre practice as a social and political involvement, with a belief in theatre as a space for common reflection and in collectivity as a position against marginalizing systems. So let's go back to Omar's biography just very quickly, so you have an idea. Omar has been commissioned by a host of international festivals, theaters, and universities to create work. from Theaterfestival Schwindelfrei in Mannheim to the University of Houston in Texas, NYUAD's Performing Arts Center. Sukak as an entity has been in residence in many more places than I can name here. The Lift Festival, Sundance Theatre Lab. They collaborate with different French theaters. I will not start listing touring because that would be endless. There are two more elements of Sukak's and Omar's work that I would like to mention very quickly. Very early on, Omar started leading psychosocial interventions with Sukak. So he and Sukak target various communities in different regions of Lebanon and even abroad, where they give drama therapy workshops, and then they create collective performances with these groups. And these are very diverse groups. And if Omar wants to, he can speak about it in a minute. And one last piece of information, just pointing towards how Sukak is really an integral factor in the ecosystem of theater and performance and dance in Beirut, Lebanon, and beyond. They have a festival called the festival is called Sidewalks, and within the festival there's something that's called Focus Liban, and that's really a gathering place for the community, a place for emerging young and not so emerging artists to present their work, and a super important date in international programmers and directors' calendars, because that's when we go to Beirut to see those performances. So welcome, Omar. We're very glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm very happy again to see you both, Ogutu and Martin, on the even though it's on the screen, but it's the same screen. It gives a sense of normality again, because the sense of normality of how life used to be before the COVID, and the people in the same room now are on the same screen, but there is something very comfortable in this encounter that I'm appreciating a lot. Yes, to speak about ecosystems that lead us to mentorship, to the mentorship program. When we started Zukak back in 2006, the first thing that we felt actually was solitude. We felt lonely. We felt there is an expression in Arabic, I'm trying to translate, like an apple that just fell from the tree and is alone on the floor. So we felt like this. And there was no economy for theater in Lebanon. There was no transgeneration passing because of the war. There was a lack of transmission also, because people stopped working during the war. And then we, the post-war generation, the post-Civil War generation, of course, found ourselves without having people to follow or even to counter in our artistic quest and research of processes. So we started trying to start from scratch. And this is how we felt artistically and in means of tools very poor. We didn't have someone to tell us, like Ogutu is telling his fellow artist and colleague, you have to start from something that astonishes you, that something that impresses you. We didn't knew even this information. So all of us had to travel abroad and look at how theater is done abroad. And we came back with this concept, this very Euro-centered conception of theater to Lebanon. But we told those are not to do those, are inviting artists from abroad to give us workshop. And we took those tools from abroad and we retranslated them into our own, retranslated them for our own means. And then we created our first performance that was an adaptation of Hamlet Machine, actually, by Heiner Müller. That was like a huge audience fiasco, because inside this performance, we put everything we knew, everything we learned, and people came to watch it and didn't see anything in it. And there was, we rehearsed it for a year and nobody came to watch it. That was like, okay, so we needed to understand our audience also at that moment more, and we needed also to raise the awareness of audience about experimental theater, because the audience was used to only post-war theater that was funded by European by that time, and that European theater was a theater that was coming to preach peace or how to live together, while what we wanted to do was not about peace or living together or freedom of speech. We wanted to stage our own ideas. And through our encounters, because we couldn't at that point make artistical performances and there was no economy for it, we started working with people. We started working with the refugee of the 2006 war on Lebanon that came to Beirut. And this is where we started working in camps and schools. And then later on, when the crisis left, we started working in prison and with women subject to domestic violence. And all those encounters, during all those encounters, we started to understand what we want to work on in order to be connected with the whole community that is Lebanon. Because that community was also scattered and we were completely marginalized at that time, because the statue of artists in Lebanon is the statue of prostitutes. And there was, and on a social level, if you're doing theater as a work, it's a hobby. They ask you, what do you do next to it? So we decided to make a profession out of it. This is why we decided to open a studio. And in this studio, we decided to support artists to create their own work in order not to be alone in the field of performing arts. We needed to have people else than us to work and to present their work, and to show their approach to theater, so that there's someone else. And then we noticed that at the university in Lebanon, there was no, there was no approach to what Oguto. I am very impressed by this first approach, because it summarizes very easily the mentoring process. Qu'est-ce qui t'émerveille? What amazes you? And in the university, they never start from it. They don't even start from an academical point of view. In Lebanese universities, they start to tell you, you are an idiot. You came to do theater. You are a complete idiot. Go and search for a real job. So what we decided to do for this mentoring program is to give the new generations that is coming after us something that you never had: time, space, someone to speak to, even someone, and a platform where you can do wrong and you can fail, actually, and a platform also where you will have to fail for the first time. And we also give him financial support to it, in order, not because it's important money, but in order to make him feel that what he is doing, it's actually work. And this is what we were missing. And this small amount of money that we were giving to this to the artist, put him directly from a hobby relation to his work to a professional relation to his work. As also, when we started doing this theater, we noticed that when we do theater, we all the time need a momentum. And if we don't have a momentum, like a season, like in Europe or wherever in the world, there is a momentum for theater. In Lebanon, there is no momentum for theater. So you started creating your play, and then you continue working. And when it's done, and it can take 5 years, you show it to the audience. But if you do not have a momentum, there is nothing to look forward to. This is why also we created Focus Liban and the whole festival, in order to give the momentum to these artists, in order also to practically give them our tools of how to distribute time, how to relate to time. And this was also about how to create an economy, and also to make out of Lebanon a place where there is a future for theater, in the sense that Lebanon, there is Focus Liban, this platform with international curator coming. It's better for you to stay here than to leave Lebanon and to try to make it out in Europe, where it's very difficult to get noticed. And this is how we understood also because you build projects, you make a space, you make a mentoring program, and then you don't know why you are doing all of these things. But at a certain point, you notice that everything you are doing is to create a community that is alternative to the society that our government wants to give us. And in the society that our government is idealizing, there is no place for culture. There is only place for obscurantism. There is only place for ignorance. And there is only place for approval for the politicians' discourse and agenda. While culture in places like Lebanon and many countries is taking young people out of their ideologies, out of the military ideology, because the only future today, especially in Lebanon, is to get into a political party if you want to have a future. And this political party is religious, and you're brainwashed in 5 minutes. But guess what? We notice that theater also and the mentoring program can brainwash, let's say, or take out the washing machine out of these youth. And sometimes it's just about one workshop of theater that can switch the whole brain of an individual. And I don't go very far. When I was a young adolescent in Lebanon, I had two choices. Either I go with my friend to military training and political party educational sessions, or I go do theater. I chose theater instead of military training. And this is what also all the mentoring programs that we have that are not only for individuals, young emerging artists. Now we developed another mentoring program called Generation Z that is for students in high schools to whom we give productions and do follow up for their projects. Students that are like 15 and 16 years old, because this youngster, if they do not get a relation to theater now, they will choose to become bankers in 2 years. And this is why we started even younger the mentorship program. And we also doing a training of practitioners to become themselves trainers to the psychosocial tools we're given, to the psychosocial tools, intervention into psychosocial intervention using psychosocial tools, using theater, because these people that are taking those training are expanding the culture of culture and the culture of performing arts very fastly. And in a way, it's one thing our community of free thinkers, of artists, of people that believe that narratives can be changed through art, through theater, expand and get more and more bigger. This is why after a year of depression in Zukak and year of reconsidering the place of theater after the Beirut blast, after that our studio exploded, instead we thought for several months to leave Lebanon. There is no place for us, nobody wants us. But very, very slowly we noticed that we cannot leave because we're leaving behind us a whole community. So instead of retracting, we decided to expand. So our studio is going to be 3 times bigger. Our mentoring program is going to be 3 times bigger. everything. Hopefully, the festival is going to be 3 times bigger. And yeah.
Omar, thank you for all of this. You've already talked about almost all of the topics that we had on our list.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm really sorry.
Super interesting. I was going to suggest that we show the video of Rahaf Jamal, one of the mentees of your last program. And while we watch that, on the one hand, Ogutu and I can start thinking about what we want to react to. And maybe you could change your internet connection, because although we understood everything you were saying, your voice sounds a bit metallic. And I was wondering if perhaps the other connection is better. So Jan, this is a moment to show the video.
هذا المشروع شيء كتير خاص بالنسبة لإلي. بلشت أكتبه من بعد ما كتير ناس من حياتي كانت عم تسافر من لبنان أو عم تفل. أنا أكيدة إنه بهالمشروع ممكن كتير ناس يلاقوا حالهم، من ناحية إنه دايماً في حدا يا بده يضب غراضه ليفل أو الناس بدها تضل. المسرحية بتحكي عن شخصيتين اللي بيتعرفوا على بعض بظروف كتير غريبة وصعبة، وبيساعدوا بعض. كل حدا بيساعد التاني بغير طريقة. مع الوقت بصير في عنا شخصية من هالشخصيات عنده هوس بالتاني، وهالشي بيؤدي لأنه العلاقة بيناتهم تتدهور. بلشنا كان على أساس إنه نبلش نكون خلصين كتابة، بعدين نخلص كتابة، بعدين نبلش إخراج etc. بعدين لاحظنا إنه مع البروسس تبع الشغل مع الممثلين وكل شيء في كتير أشياء انشالت، في كتير أشياء تغيرت، في أشياء زادت كمان، وهالأشياء بركة ما كنت قدرانة إنه لاحظها لو ما قطعنا بهالظروف مع بعض. برنامج زقاق الإرشاد كتير ساعد أكيد. بتحسن إنه عم يحضنوك كأنك أنت بارت من العائلة تبعهم. الشغل مع عمر كان كتير دقيق ومفصل، بناحية إنه كان دايماً إنه بيعمل بيكينج لماي برين. الطريقة اللي اثنيناتنا بنفكر فيها إنه ركبت بين بعض، وإيه مشان هيك كان كتير كان هالمشروع كله على بعضه very productive.
ذنبي ينهشني، كلما أفلت من ناب يلتقطني بناب. أنا شيطان، أمتطي فجيعتي، فاجتنبيني يا بنت الغاب.
بحس الأولوية هلأ هو إنه يكون الفنان بس صادق مع حاله أو مع غيره. بحس إنه إذا منقدم شيء كتير ما عم نزبط، ما عم نجرب نفرجي انه نحن بنقدر نعمل شيء، بس عم نفرجي نحن كيف. هالشيء ممكن كتير يساعد، خاصة بوقت مثل هلا الاندستري اللي نحن عم نشتغل فيها صارت ضعيفة، فنحن بنقويها بالتروث تبعنا وكل شيء عم نجرب نقوله فيها.
ليه بنستحي منهم؟ حلوين؟ هالقليل بيدفوا وكتير مهضومين ونامين.
شكلك بعدك كتير صغيرة، كيف بتشوفي هيك شيء حلو؟
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jan, for showing that. Ogutu, before I start to ask any questions, is there anything specific that you'd like to comment on? There were a number of things that connected what both of you said. Among others, the importance of striking a balance between challenging people and making them feel safe, giving them space for failure, although you are planning presentations, and in fact, presentations in highly visible places such as Focus Liban or the Spielart Festival. Ogut, is there anything you'd like to say about the tools you use to create that space? What has helped you? I think you're still muted.
So yeah, so it was interesting to hear from you, Omar, because there are quite a lot of parallels, even though from very different context and situatedness, and especially this still mentality that if you go into art, it's because you failed somehow and it's your last resort, or it's a hobby, that is something that you do after your real job, and also in terms of the question of supporting a process and tools as well, how to kind of retooling and rethinking the tools you have. And for me, it's also changing perhaps the definition of a mentor into an enabler. And somehow you finding a way that you are someone who's enabling someone else to work and to explore and to think and to doubt and to be. And somehow this has allowed a different positioning within as well. And also to give distance so that it's not, so that the artist also is really exploring also on their own at times and actually longer, and then coming in also later. So somehow that giving room to someone also to be with their work, to be with their process, to be with, and then coming in when there is also an invitation to come in, when there is a question, when there is a desire to clear up and to have a conversation or to feedback. And for us, at least for this and I think also for the next iterations of this, we keep it also very small, at least for this. And so there is that proximity and closeness, and not just between me, but also between the artists, because they're exchanging also with each other. And I think that was just about allowing, because there is sometimes a desire for outreach and to go and to connect with more. And so it was also how to think about how to think about a small process and perhaps an intimate process, intimacy within that. And then after that, also open up, because this is the first year that we operate as a lab. And there is a desire to also think even what does the institutional mean with outside of the idea of the normal structure of where you have to register yourself with the government and you have to go through all these processes of sustaining an institution. So we have also upcoming, like hopefully a 2-year incubation period where we question also what does it mean to exist. And the other is also that in the coming years, the artists of the first cohort also will join the institution and be part of the organization, but also part of facilitating also other artists. So there is a cyclicalness that is happening. And the idea, I mean, so presentation was also an interesting conversation, because we were presenting in Nairobi, but also presenting in Munich. And the question of also, at least for Maabara, part of New Frequencies, which is part of the program within Spielart, was, and for me, was also how do, in terms of support, how do festivals or institutions can support an artist in the context where they're in, and also not always expecting something back. And at the same time, how to facilitate a dialogue with broader audiences. And also of importance is that the works don't show fast outside of Kenya, especially in Europe, that there is a circulation within first before it moves out. And part of that also for me noticing while touring that I saw more work from Africa in Europe than I did in Nairobi. And so then it's the question of how do we change this very old trade route and have kind of different mobility as well. And it's growing in terms of that conversation, but and also a challenging one to have.
I was wondering, Omar, if you'd like to comment on the way the different economies in the performing arts are intertwined. Is it a necessity for a Lebanese artist to talk to European presenters? Is there a right moment for a young emerging artist to do so? Is there an interest in building a performing arts economy that would keep artists closer to you? So you wouldn't have to rely on European presenters. How does that work for you? And what are the things you're critical about?
5 years ago, that was our long-term strategy, trying how to create an ecosystem in Lebanon that doesn't need the European dependency and market. Not to be ungrateful to the European market and network of festivals that supported the Lebanese scene since the 90s and was essential for its growth. But in the meaning where if we wanted at certain point to create a real scene in Lebanon, there should be a scene also that is here to stay and is not here to be exported. So we wanted to create an economy inside Lebanon. But now it's something that we cannot anymore count on, since after the collapse of the economy of Lebanon, €1 in Lebanon is 20,000 Lebanese pound, which is approximately more than 20 times what it used to be a year ago. And there is no more economy in Lebanon. So artists are leaving Lebanon, but when I say leaving Lebanon, we're saying in the last 4 months, more than 250,000 persons left Lebanon. All of them, most of them aged between 18 and 35. The art scene in Lebanon, I wanted to make a play a few months ago where I needed a bilingual actor. I literally couldn't find someone in Lebanon, aged between 18 and 35. It was impossible, so I had to cancel the project, even though it was a paid job, which is much needed now in Beirut. So now we cannot speak about independency from the European market. On the contrary, this is when we need the support, and the support is here. Many festivals around the world are organized and focused around the Lebanese art scene, which I can understand is very bothering for other nationalities and other countries, because our crisis is taking over the festivals. And but also after the Beirut blast, we've seen something that we didn't see before in Lebanon, which is support from European for sustainability of culture in Lebanon, which is for the first time actually where they separate culture and development. And we are not in need anymore to justify our funds, getting funds from European funders for development and then justify it how we transmit it to culture, but directly to culture. And this is because most of the neighborhood in Beirut that have been exploded was where artists and cultural centers and galleries were. So there's been a lot of support for art and culture at that moment in Lebanon, which will never be sufficient, because we're speaking about for Lebanon to get back on its feet, it's between 15 and 20 years. So let's hope that that kind of support will remain for that long time, but from experience, it will end up in 2 years or 3 years. unless we have a major crisis again, which we don't want.
And just because I'm curious, because you're saying you want to rebuild everything 3 times larger, the studio, the festival, how do you manage? Are those European funds in part? Is there crowdfunding opportunities in Lebanon? How do you even make that happen? Because you said you were in the middle of construction work and it was going ahead rather quickly and you hope to open in December. How does that work?
During the crisis, so now there is nobody to rent anymore in Lebanon. So when we are expanding, we're taking space that no one's wants. So we're taking it for peanuts, more or less. Rents went very low. We renew our bail and it went very, very, it's like 25% of what it used to be. Our location is not at all very attractive to people to invest in it, which is near the port. We're almost 1 kilometer from the port. So a lot of people doesn't want anymore to live there. What is left over there are really the people that cannot leave anymore, which is our new community, let's say. And it's also for us a way to bring back people to that place, to that area where people don't want to go anymore. That's the thing. So there is an opportunity that we jumped on. And then another way, we didn't want to come back to the same project, to the same space, because we were in the space 5 minutes before. So when we left the space, it exploded. So we had difficulties to re-enter the same space. So we don't want it to look the same again. We want something, a new project, a new space in front of us. So this is why we expanded to enter it from a different door also. And also to create a community space. Since the COVID, the few public spaces in Lebanon have been completely closed and they didn't open them again. People cannot afford anymore to go to restaurants or to bars, and there is no sidewalks in Lebanon to walk on. So we want a place where people can gather also, not only people, but us, even us, somewhere else than Zoom and apartments. I will stop speaking.
We enjoy listening to you, Omar. That's not the thing. But this is a good moment to encourage our audience, who I've heard are all on YouTube, to send in questions. So Jan is gathering these questions for us. Feel free to use other languages than English. And obviously, this is also an invitation to Omar and Ogutu. If you have questions for each other, this is also a good moment to talk to each other. Otherwise, there are a number of other questions that I wanted to ask you, both of you. In fact, you've both spoken about a lack of transmission of knowledge. In French, we have these different words for savoir and savoir-faire. And I haven't come up with a good English translation, like you know things in your head, and you know how to put things into practice, and those can be different. And Ogutu's also spoken about a third space sort of between theory and practice that he wants to create. So when you speak about transmission, are you also talking about lineage, artistic lineage? Are you talking about heritage? Are you talking about a specific style, a specific way of making art that is close to you, dear to you, and that you want to transmit to people? Or is it more about helping people identify their own needs? And if so, how do you do that? How, if you meet an artist who wants to make something and he thinks he needs X, is there a moment where you go, okay, I'm going to give him X? Or is there a moment where you go, he thinks he needs X, but maybe what he needs, in fact, is something different. So we will try to engage a conversation on that. How does that transmission aspect work for both of you? So, Ogutu, do you want to go first?
For me, it's based on the need of the artist, and then trying to understand how to support by connect. So if it's an area of interest that I have no expertise in, or that is not part of my own artistic practice, then I would connect to an advisor to share work of someone, or based on, of course, my experience traveling and meeting and connecting, but also sometimes we would research together something and say, okay, maybe we reach out to. So it's not a desire to produce other Ubutus. It's a desire to really support artists in their own questioning, in their own fascinations, in their own, and of course this is always because you of course reflect based on your lived experiences and what you do, and the accumulation of memory and what you have. And so it's always also questioning myself as well when I'm giving feedback. When does that come from taste? When is that feedback based on taste? When is it an interpretation? When is it an opinion? When is it a critical look? When is it a feedback? And so even in my own teaching, I was feeling very stuck within it until I realized that there is an assumption that teachers know how to teach and learn, and students know how to learn. And so by coming with that we are also exploring things together, and there is a framework of knowledge that I offer based on what I have, but then we can always play and work with it. And so and that builds from there. Yeah.
I think the correct translation about savoir and savoir-faire is knowledge and know-how. Mm-hmm. And for me, knowledge is not something I can give, because knowledge is something that is very subjective, and it's something that you build from the time that we are given. We give space and time for you to acquire knowledge and your own knowledge. As for the know-how, yes, there is a necessity for the know-how that is lacking in Lebanon or in a lot of countries. Know-how, but not even know-how that like light is not a lamp. As stupid as that. When you speak about light and performing arts, it's not like if you put light on her face, that's not enough. And this is it's called knowledge, but it's really it's really know-how. It's like you cannot put just light coming from the front. You have to put light coming from the back in order to create a three-dimensional impression. If you put light from the side, it gives a dramatic impression. Light is a whole concept. Before putting the light, you decide what is the light concept that you want to deal with. What is the sound concept? Why are you putting sound? What do we mean by illustration if you're putting like woo on a freaky scene? So this is the knowledge that is more of a know-how, because there have not been time for them to build knowledge, because they haven't been exposed as much as we have been to theater. So also the time for knowledge is the time that we give them during the festival to go and watch performances that they couldn't go and watch in Europe. Also, so we give time for knowledge and we give the know-how. As speaking about lineage, I hope nobody will get in our lineage, because it's freaky and it's full of traumas, and it's full of subjective relation to what fascinated us. And for the lineage before us, yes, there is a know-how that they didn't transmit to us. What is doing theater in times of war? Don't get illusions that there is an industry in Lebanon. Don't get illusions that if you do experimental, incomprehensible by mass audiences, there would be an audience in your room. don't spend your money on communication, for example, because nobody will come as much as you put money on the communication. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk of know-how and knowledge and know-how, because in my side, it's for me the one knowledge that I am not able to transfer is know-how. I say I can show you how, but I cannot help you to know how, because the only way you know how is by you practicing, it's by you taking, doing. So it's procedural knowledge. It's a knowledge by doing, and so often I talk about know what something is, know why something is, know who in terms of who in the sense of who as peer, but who as community, but also who as the professional. So if in the example you gave of light, is that who in your peer group is interested in light design and you would like to collaborate and form a group with, who is in the professional who working in that and already has a practice, and then you can connect and have a session together. How does both this then meet a community in terms of when you're working, and then know how. And then I go, I show you how, and perhaps that is through seeing work or bringing in someone, or we discuss. But then really know how, for me, it's tacit. It cannot be exchanged. It has to be through the person doing. And then something I realized also halfway through it is like, there was a lot of focusing on knowledge, and of course the question of acquisition of knowledge and application of knowledge transfer. But there was another side that was missing, that only hit me later, which is how to play with that knowledge when you have it, how to be creative, how to be curious with it, how to challenge it also, so that it doesn't become this, so we are not reproducing new knowledge structures that now, okay, so this is the methodology that you have to follow when you're a Mahabara person, because it's based. And so on the other side, then we introduced a new set of questions, which is, if you know what something is, then perhaps you can ask, what if? If you know why something, you can ask, why not? If you can, how can, who can? So somehow that side then triggers you to, what if I take this and I try this other thing and see what produces? And that, for me, that's the place of imagination, the place of play, the place of creativity, that is also often cut, because when you're told this is why, this is it, and don't question it, then we say, okay, what if we say, why not think of it in a different way? What would that produce? And it's still, in a way, part of the mentorship process is also to give permission to do that, because the education system in Kenya was very much around removing this possibility. Because when I went to school, for instance, the Minister of Culture, of Education at the time, removed the arts from the curriculum, because the logic was, we don't need artists. We are a developing nation. What we need is hard science, engineering, all these quote unquote developmental knowledge systems. And so it was about that. And of course, then down the line, there's a realization that was a mess, and there is a process of reintroducing the arts and reintroducing this. But even then, it's still around producing a person who is really who is a good exam taker, and who still has stuck in the knowledge that knowledge is power, but actually it's the application of knowledge that is power. And so then it's in all this. Yeah.
Thank you for dissecting the ambiguity of the word mentoring, which we also have a problem with it, but we found it so meta to all this transmission thing that we actually decided on it, but it's very ambiguous. And you're dissecting it in a reflective way that I think all teachers should do.
Well, since we're in the being helpful section of this talk now, maybe there is something you'd like to share about being a mentor that you've learned that could be helpful, because I'm guessing that the audience we have are people who have an interest in mentoring because perhaps they are mentors themselves, because perhaps they find themselves in a situation where they have to give advice to young artists. So what is it you as mentors, teachers have learned over the years that you found useful?
I actually can give an example that now I'm mentoring to not so young choreographer, dancers, one making a video dance, the other one making an installation dance. We have to know that I do not like dance and I have no idea about dance, but somehow with those two projects, I found a connection with the artist and with the project. And the mentoring is not about it's not about sharing knowledge or know-how. It's about the connection that we got between the project and me and the artist and me and the artist and the mentoring program, because those are also confirmed artists. So there's something that is also beyond that is related to the intimacy that Ogutu was speaking in the beginning, that also is something that you cannot put word on it. Because also we have to know that there is mentoring program that fails. There is no connection between the mentors and the artist or the project. And that can go completely kaput, or that can really be successful, but not within the range of the mentoring program. And we got these kind of things where project from the mentoring, I didn't find a thing or a link with this project, but actually toured a lot or have audience success. Yes, this is what...
Ogutu, how do you measure the success of your own mentoring? You're still muted.
I think after this week, we will have some time to allow things to settle and then go into a reflection process where we look back on the experience that we've had together and actually ask these questions and find out where's the place of meeting and how do you know that something worked or didn't, and also how can you learn from it also. But one thing for me, at least throughout this process, is and Omar, you also articulated it in a sense that it is around creating relationships and connections, and somehow it's affirming the fact that existence is a result of connection. And if you can connect to the person, like really connect to the person that you're with, then there is a different experience that happens. And sometimes then it's understanding, that perhaps I'm not even needed to say anything here. Like I had these experiences where they would, because they felt, we had worked on this, where they'd say, I don't need you to even respond, I just need you to listen. And sometimes that's all that sometimes someone needs. It's just listening and deep listening, and that's it. You don't need to add anything, say anything, just be present and be with that person. So, and also that decentering yourself as well, that it's not about you. And so these two things have been present. And because I'm working in education and in an undergraduate program, and also with Mahabara, which works with artists who already have a practice in place, I was always thinking about the difference between training and mentoring, and what these two connections have. And this is still something that I'm searching as well. Yeah.
I'll maybe just take a moment to share something from my own practice. And also I need to encourage people once again to send in questions. We haven't received any so far, and I don't know how long we will be able to go on if there are no questions from the audience. But since I have a practice that's, well, a little bit in mentoring and a little bit in teaching, but more in being a dramaturg for artists, it took me a while to understand that I was not expected to give the perfect answer to an artist, that I was not I was not meant to perfectly analyze everything the artist was doing, construct a whole thesis around it, and then give the artist the one answer that this particular artist at that particular moment was desperately waiting for. But it was okay to share a doubt, to be very specific about what I had seen and heard, to try and describe in the best way that I could what had happened to me as this very specific individual person during a rehearsal or a performance. So that subjectivity was in fact helpful. And the knowledge that I have about theater performance dance is something that exists at the back of my head, but that doesn't necessarily find a direct application even. As in, theories of dramaturgy, how should a play work? What is a character? That exists somewhere, and it's part of my experience. But I don't have to actively analyze that and bring that to the experience that I have. So it was about giving me permission to be myself in that teaching, mentoring, dramaturgical process that I found helpful, and that then the others found helpful as well. I don't know if that resonates with anybody. Ogutu and Omar, since we have no questions.
There is just one point, an image that has always been staying with me and that I reference back, which is this cartoon where you have different animals with different, and the examiner says, for a fair selection, we're going to give you an exam, and the exam is to climb a tree. And so the climb tree metaphor, and that is always accompanied by this statement, which is if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And I think somehow that image helps me understand the challenges of what we do, and how to find how to exit that logic of.
I will leave it on that image.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay for you? Yeah. Shall we?
Yeah. Of course.
Don't ask.
I'll keep it for my next mentoring session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Omar Abiyazar and Ogutu Muraya, for being with us today. I have a few last things to say, which is this is the last day of Spielart Festival, and please go and see the last performances, because there are quite a few beautiful things happening today. There is Prodromos Cynicoris version of The Cherry Orchard called Somewhere Beyond the Cherry Trees. There is a performance by Kim Noble, certainly worth seeing, called Lullaby for Scavengers. There are a number of things happening in the New Frequencies program, which is what also Ogutu's mentees projects were part of. Those two are not showing today, but there are many others that you might want to check out. And last but not least, there is the closing party. So thanks to everybody for listening. It's been a pleasure talking to you two. And thanks to Spielart Festival for having us today. Have a very nice day.
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you too.